some more time to make a final comment.
I think a fair response is that we grant an additional 5 minutes to opponents of the bill, and if you allow me to conclude with 5 minutes, I'm fine with that. So I would just modify the objection to include what I've stated. If that's acceptable, I would remove my objection to the modified motion.
Does the senator from New Jersey so modify his request?
I do.
Is there objection? Without objection. The senator from New Jersey.
Thank you. I rise in opposition to the resolution. As we evaluate the resolution, we've got to consider the characteristics of a specific military system, the context which will be used, as well as how we utilize arms sales as a foreign policy tool. Now, I have much in common with Senator Paul on the question of Yemen. I have moved in his direction. The Saudis have had their opportunity. I am promoting legislation with several of our colleagues on a bipartisan basis to deal with exactly that. If I am the one holding up arms sales to Saudi Arabia as we speak, as the ranking member on the Foreign Relations Committee, that's why it hasn't come to the floor, because I'm not letting it go through unless the administration breaks through a hold at the end of the day, which would violate all of the existing processes we have. But this vote is not Yemen. It is not Saudi Arabia. It is not the United Arab Emirates. It is Bahrain. And Bahrain is a critical ally to us. It hosts the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, providing a vital naval base from which the United States protects its national security interests in the Gulf and throughout the region. And its willingness to host our naval forces also places Bahrain at greater risk from attack from Iran and terrorist groups seeking to do harm to the United States. It's also a security partner as it comes to piracy, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Iran. It hosted an Israeli UNESCO delegation in late June. Now, I have great disagreement with the Bahrainians as it relates to their human rights record. It's abhorrent. It's abhorrent. And we're going to continue to fight on that issue with them. But at the end of the day, halting the sale of weapons intended to defend Bahrain's security is not the solution in this particular case. I'll close and then yield the balance of the time to the chairman. Arms sales to foreign countries provide the United States and this body with important influence and leverage on those countries' views and activities on foreign policy. And sometimes, if used smartly, they can shift a country's actions in a positive direction. Now, as I said, I'm currently opposing an important arms sale to Saudi Arabia due to my concerns that the Saudis are using these weapons in a specific context inappropriately. Civilian casualties rise, the weapon sale is not part, this weapon sale is not part of a comprehensive strategy to end the civil war in Iran. So, in Yemen. So I just would urge us to, on this particular occasion, to oppose this particular resolution. And I probably will stand with the gentleman when the moment comes as it relates to denying the Saudis arms sales, particularly in the midst of what they are doing in Yemen. And with that, I yield to the distinguished chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee.
Senator from Tennessee.
Madam President, I want to thank the ranking member for his comments, his friendship, and welcome him back. And I look forward to his leadership on foreign policy issues for many, many years. I share his views. I have concerns about the trajectory that Saudi Arabia is on right now. Have concerns about the war in Yemen. We've had hearings. We have people on our committee that are trying to take steps to deal with the war in Yemen. Obviously, very upset with what has happened with the journalists. I think a price needs to be paid. I know the administration today sent out notice that they were sanctioning 17 of the individuals that were involved. Hopefully additional steps will be made. I've asked for a high-level briefing with Mattis, Pompeo, and Gina Haspel to come in as soon as we get back to share with us what is happening with Saudi Arabia on both fronts, both Yemen and what is happening as it relates to the journalist who was assassinated, in my opinion, at the direction of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So I have a lot of concerns. I think when you have concerns, though, you address those concerns to the people that you have concerns with. Bahrain is not one of those. Bahrain certainly has had some issues with human rights, and we have dealt with those. It is a city-state in the Persian Gulf, where we have 7,800 men and women in uniform who are protecting our interests there, who are a buffer against Iran. And for us to block sales, offensive sales to the country of Bahrain that is housing one of our most important naval bases over something that has nothing to do with them but has something to do with another country is not a pragmatic nor a sensible step. So I hope that we will oppose this. I think that we will. I understand the senator from Kentucky's frustrations. I do. He shares those many times in the Foreign Relations Committee. I do understand those, but it seems to me that taking something out on a country that's unrelated to what is happening is a very inappropriate and not a mature step for the United States Senate to take, and I hope we will soundly defeat this. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Kentucky.
Let's be very clear, Bahrain does have something to do with the war in Yemen. They are part of a 9-country coalition. They have lost soldiers in Bahrain. They have flown bombing missions. Bahrain is an intimate part of the coalition fighting the war. So you might ask yourself, is it enough to do nothing? We're going to put sanctions on people who are in jail. You think they care? They're probably going to be beheaded. Sanctions is a way of pretending to do something and doing nothing. The arms sales. I'm not saying we never sell arms to Bahrain. I'm saying one time we don't. That might get them the message. People say, we don't like the human rights record of Bahrain. It's abominable. But do you think they will react to weakness? Please don't hurt your people. Please don't commit atrocities on the majority Shia population. No, quit selling them arms one time and they'll sit up and they'll say, let's have a talk. People respect strength. We don't show strength unless we do something that is more dramatic than putting sanctions on people who are already in prison. This is about Saudi Arabia, but it's also about the coalition of 9 countries of which Bahrain is. If you think meek words will stop the Saudis, listen to this. Pompeo said 3 weeks ago, Pompeo said that they should cease all bombing of civilian centers. How many bombs have dropped on Hodeidah since he asked them to cease? 200 bombs have dropped on Hodeidah, the port where the humanitarian aid needs to come in for a starving population, since we told them not to. Now, we said we're not going to refuel their planes anymore. We're not refueling their planes. They're refueling their planes with our planes. Everything they fly is our plane. Their pilots are trained by us. Their mechanics are trained by us. We need to be stronger. It is a sense of weakness. It is a display of weakness not to at least block one arm sales. This is a modest proposal, and it's the least we can do.
Senator from Tennessee.
Madam President, I move to table the motion to discharge Senate Joint Resolution 65 and ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mr. Brown, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper,